There was a comic strip called Pearls Before Swine. It was one of my favorite. I don't know if you've read it. Stephen Pastis. And in one of the strips, Goat says to Rat, "Do you ever pray?" "Just the genius prayer," Rat replies. "What's that?" says Goat. Rat says, "God grant me the courage to change the things I cannot accept, serenity to accept the things I have changed, and the wisdom to know I'm different." "Every church I know," said Bishop John Shelby Spong, "claims that we are the true church. And they have some ultimate authority to prove it. We have the infallible Pope. We have the inerrant Bible. The idea that the truth of God can be bound in any human system, by any human creed, by any human book, is almost beyond imagination to me," said Spong. "God is not a Christian. God is not a Jew or Muslim or Hindu or Buddhist." "I honor my tradition," said the Episcopal bishop. "I walk through my tradition. But I don't believe my tradition defines God. I think it only points me to God." Spong said, "Religion is in the control business, the guilt-producing control business. The church doesn't like for people to grow up because you can't control grown-ups. That's why I think a lot of you ministers refer to our work as herding cats." Spong said, "That's why we talk about being born again. When you're born again, you're still a child. But people," he said, "don't need to be born again. They need to grow up. They need to accept responsibility for themselves and their world." Is it any wonder that Pew Research shows religious affiliation falling rapidly? 2019 surveys reveal that the U.S. Christian population is down 12% in the past decade, while the unaffiliated group has risen 9%. Even more telling, 4 in 10 young people seldom or never go to church. According to PBS NewsHour that I heard aired just this past Friday, 76% of baby boomers self-identify as Christian. But among millennials, the figure is 0.5%. The radical right blames heathen liberals for this assault on Christianity. Might as well blame education. Get this. On a 2019 Pew survey of religious knowledge in America, you can go online and take this survey yourself. On a survey of religious knowledge, Jews, atheists, and agnostics, in that order, scored the highest. Non-religious people know more about religion than religious people. According to the bylaws of our UUA, the living tradition we share draws from many sources. Remember this? I gave out the little cards last time. Among those sources, wisdom from the world's religions, which inspires us in our ethical and spiritual life. Religions have a lot to say about life and behavior, about ethics and morality and spirituality. But religions contradict each other. They even contradict themselves at times. Where is the wisdom in this? How do we draw inspiration from these divergent points of view? I found one answer recently in a very unlikely place for me. I attended two Baptist institutions of higher learning, Stetson University and Southern Baptist Seminary, both in the 1970s. They were both remarkable schools, challenging, provocative, and liberal. But in the early 1980s, all that changed when fundamentalists took over the denomination. Southern Seminary was forced to fire many of its outstanding teachers, and Stetson University pulled out of the denomination. I'm not bashing Baptists here, I'm stating facts. This is the denomination whose former president, Jerry Vines from Jacksonville, called Muhammad a, quote, demon-possessed pedophile, end quote. Well, those Baptists found me again recently. I began receiving monthly periodicals a few years back from both of my alma maters. My first inclination was toss them out. Nothing there for me. Knew it all and disagreed with most of it. Eventually, however, professional curiosity persuaded me to see just what those radicals were up to. In a 2013 summer edition from seminary, there it was, quote, a Christian understanding of Islam, end quote. An entire issue dedicated to better understanding that world religion. As seminary president Albert Mohler said, it is impossible to imagine how a minister of the gospel can be trained and prepared for faithful service without a knowledge of Islam. This is the same thing that the Ministerial Fellowship Committee of the UUA had explained to me when they compelled me to read the book Muhammad by Karen Armstrong. Wonderful book, I recommend it. Of course, the motivations of the two institutions were a bit different. For the Baptists, Christianity, Islam, and Western secularism represent the three great rival worldviews of our age, each one fighting for the souls of men and women. President Mohler said, this century will be marked by the most sustained confrontation between Christianity and Islam of the modern age. A rather prophetic statement, if accidentally true. And yet, in spite of all that rhetoric, I read an article within that publication that I found somewhat hopeful. It was called, How Should Christians Talk to Members of World Religions? Travis Kearns related a story of Krister Stendahl, a highly acclaimed dean of Harvard who later became a Lutheran bishop in his native Sweden. In 1985, the Mormon Church was planning to build a temple in Stockholm and facing powerful opposition. Bishop Stendahl responded to the pending conflict with his, quote, 3 rules of religious understanding. First, when trying to understand another religion, he wrote, you should ask the adherents of the religion, not its enemies. Second, don't compare your best to their worst. Make fair comparisons. For example, the article said, don't compare the Islam of terrorists to the Christianity of Mother Teresa. And the third rule, Stendhal said, and I particularly love this one, leave room for holy envy. We don't have to agree, he said, with another religion to recognize that the Buddhist may pray more intently. The Hindu may believe more strongly. The Mormon may give more liberally. Or the Jew may love more fully. Poet and philosopher Henri Amiel said, what we do not understand, we have no right to judge. Pew Research has shown that there are 2.2 billion Christians in the world, 32% of the population. There are 1.6 billion Muslims, 23%. 1 billion Hindus, 15%. Nearly 500 million Buddhists, 7%. And 14 million Jews, 0.2%. More than 6% of us practice what Pew Research calls folk or traditional religions. African, Chinese, Native American, Australian Aborigines, etc. An estimated 58 million belong to other religions. The Baha'i, Jainism, Sikhism, Shintoism, Taoism, Wiccanism, Wicca, to mention a few. I'm guessing we're a tiny, tiny blip inside this 1%. But the interesting datum shows that 1 in 6 around the globe, roughly 16%, have, quote, no religious affiliation. This makes unaffiliated the third largest group worldwide behind Christians and Muslims, about equal in size to the Catholic population. UU minister and Zen Buddhist priest James Ford explains that people are increasingly identifying as spiritual but not religious. How many of us have heard that or expressed it ourselves? People appear to have all of the old needs for some sense of certainty and direction, but they find the old religion useless, even harmful. In 2013, Outside Magazine reported on a group of people in Boston who call themselves the November Project. Think of it as a fitness flash mob, Madison Kahn said. A grassroots fitness community organized through social media. So the leaders tweet out a workout location before each session. Monday, calisthenics in the park. Wednesday, sprint up Harvard Stadium stairs. Friday, run the city's hills. It's like a cult, one person called it, in a good way. Hundreds of people gather at the crack of dawn to hug one another and pump their fists and take off running. Brogan Graham, one of the organizers, describes the November Project as both a fitness group and a social commentary about our anonymous, device-driven lives. Now, these are the young people speaking to us. The core of what people want, he says, is not exercise, but interaction. We're building community and accidentally getting fit. They even call themselves a tribe. And unlike Unitarian Universalists, they proselytize. I read a story in National Geographic by John Falk. Wilfred Noyce, a legendary British mountaineer and author, chased adventure all his life. He was fascinated with those qualities he had seen that get survivors through disaster. Ordinary people who overcome calamity. A survivor's most essential quality, he discovered, is a simple feeling of connection with others. People want community. This seems to me an ideal opportunity for Unitarian Universalists as we work toward the goal of world community with justice, equity, and compassion for all. But the Reverend Tom Shade says religious community is not enough. Our purpose is so much bigger than gathering with like-minded people for spiritual and mutual support. We must build religious communities not as places of refuge in which we can hide out on Sunday morning, but as places where we cultivate people with a passion for the world. What have I learned from the world's religions? I learned that God means whatever we decide it means. There are as many gods as there are people. There's a common UU saying, one God, many faiths. I say, not so. Not all religions are created equal. Some are writing books with titles like The Intolerance of Tolerance or Bad Religion, How We Became a Nation of Heretics. Bumper sticker I saw recently. Those who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities. I learned that religion means digging into the soul of life, asking profound questions, living earnestly. And mostly I have learned religion has taught me gratitude, how to be still, how to give thanks. William Broyles went camping in Wyoming with his son. They met up face to face with a grizzly and her cubs. He wrote, she stood up on her hind legs, magnificent, terrifying. William could only cower down low, sheltering his son. He said, I knew that my part in this was over. The bear had center stage. After a mighty show of force, the grizzly finally moved on. Reflecting back on the experience, William wrote, next time we came to the mountains, we'd be ready. Not that it would make any difference. We hadn't earned a next time, he said. The bear had given it to us. Grace came as a gift from unexpected givers. And if you weren't grateful, he wrote, if you didn't thank God or nature or the Great Spirit for your life, your children, for being granted the moment to walk on the earth, then a bear might as well eat you up and poop you out. That's what he said. Well, almost. Wisdom from the world's religions, which inspires us in our ethical and spiritual life. Let's start where we are, suggested UU Minister Tom Shade. Do this little experiment. Every week, when you get home from Sunday service, notice and write down what you think about doing differently in the days ahead. What did the service, the sermon, the music, the people inspire in you? Perhaps you are thinking that you should get to know more of the people by name. Perhaps you want to stop and smell the flowers more. Live with more reverence and awe. Perhaps return to a meditation practice. Call an estranged relative. Write a letter to the editor. Perhaps quit your job and join the Peace Corps. What kind of person does worshiping here inspire you to be? How does it ask you to change? God, grant me the courage to change the things I cannot accept. Serenity to accept the things I have changed. And the wisdom to know I'm different. Amen.